All right, let's get started here. Can you guys hear me? Welcome. Awesome. You know what? I forgot to do my microphone test. I've been so busy today. I actually started a little late because I am still sick and I've been trying to keep this cough under control, you guys. It's like been driving me nuts. So I apologize. I'm going to try and get through this without hacking I was up all night. It was just terrible. Yeah, I'm trying to get through this. So I apologize again if I start coughing and it's just, I'm not sure what's going on with me. I guess it's more than allergies and it's going around because I've heard other people have it, but you can kind of tell by my voice because I've been coughing all day today. So hopefully I'll get through this. I'm going to kind of supplement some of my lecture with some videos, but I think that's the best way to do it too, because the videos that are supplied to you guys in week 3 are amazing. And once I kind of show you some things, I'm going to kind of supplement it with those videos. Just I think that that's a nice way to kind of give my give my lungs a break and my throat a break a little bit too. Plus, it's required anyway for you guys to watch them. So what I'll do is I'll just start the demo of assessment 3, excuse me, and then I'll supplement it with the video after showing you each brush. We're going to be looking at different brushes that you guys are going to be working in for the assessment. So welcome. Sorry to kind of jump in here and tell you all this information at first, but it's just been a rough week and a half with this cough. It's just driving me nuts. So how is everybody doing today? Everybody survived the weekend, the long weekend? I know we talked yesterday. Some of you were able. Michael's always saying the best day of his life. I liked his positivity. Oh, Lily, you didn't sleep good either. You didn't sleep well, I should say. Oh man, I just trying to get through this, you know. Thought it was allergies at first, but I'm not quite sure. All right. Well, you know, let's get through this. You guys are great. Just being flexible with me, you know, shifting these lecture times, just kind of make it work for me too, just because I haven't been feeling good. So I appreciate that. A low-key day. Nice. That's always good. All right. So yesterday, or last night, I should say, yesterday evening, we kind of went over the discussion 3, and also we went over your assignment 3. Did anybody have any questions from that lecture, or any other questions in general? No, not yet. All right. I think this is going to be a cool little assessment too. I think you guys will have fun with this. You're going to be creating your own custom brushes. Does anybody have a Wacom tablet in this class? Or Lily, Michael, you guys are the only ones in here. I'm going to try to sip on my tea here so I can keep my throat wet. Oh, okay. Kind of cool to play around with. I actually don't have one either, but I have, you know, worked with people who have and students who have had that. So it's kind of neat to see the options with the tablets, but sometimes you have a little bit more control over the illustration style if you're really kind of into actually illustrating. It's kind of yeah, it's great with brushes too. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get started here. Just any feedback that you guys might want or need or have, let me know. And we can also save that for the end as well if you want to show anything or talk about anything. We talked about how to create patterns yesterday. And I did a demo. So if you missed that, definitely listen to the recording and create your patterns. I think it's a fun little assignment. I think the key is to use more than one icon or, you know, abstract shape. So it's a little bit more, I guess, challenging to create a seamless design. Did anybody get started with that yet? Kind of fun to play around with you know, if you create an icon, you can kind of play around with that. Oh, Michael, you did? Okay. All right, and then we're going to just talk about your assessment 3. So that's creating brushes. Learning objectives, we kind of went over yesterday, and that's pretty much all that we're going through in your discussion and your projects, what you'll be walking away with. Yesterday, like I said, we went over patterns. We looked over tiling together the patterns and the tile types, the grids, the brick by row, brick by column, hex by row, hex by column, kind of showing the different examples. I actually showed a video too that kind of showed how those lines, your how that would kind of rearrange your grid structure for your pattern. So you can do very simple and very complex. You guys, you know, definitely want to keep it somewhat simple, but so that, you know, it's not coming out too crazy. But you definitely want to make a seamless pattern design. A simple pattern is when vector shapes are repeated over and over in a regular orientation or manner. So, you know, you have maybe one little icon that you're repeating. A seamless complex pattern is when a tile is constructed in such a way that elements on its right border perfectly match ones on its left border, and top and bottom borders match as well. So I showed you kind of how to pull that in using the dialog box, the panel, to adjust your settings. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at your assessment 3 project, and we'll kind of go from there. All right. Sorry guys, I had a little cough there. All right, so basically you're going to be creating a vector pattern brush using some of the techniques in this actual project description here in the prompt. Go ahead and read about the career relevancy of this. You know, you definitely can, I think in my experience, because I worked for an advertising agency and publication company, I didn't quite use brushes as much, more so, but I did work alongside other illustrators who worked in the same office as I did, in the same design office. And they definitely, that's kind of like, that was their thing. You know, they worked very heavily with the brushes. You know, maybe just adding some simple texture to a header or a magazine cover, you know, those brushes are great for as well. So what are vector pattern brushes? You can go ahead and read this creative blog. Talks about brushes are a great way to beef up your Adobe Illustrator work. You can go a long way with Illustrator basic tools, but with the right set of brushes and the flexible way in which Illustrator allows them to be used on vector shapes, you can quickly and easily add texture and character to any piece of work. And that's kind of what I was just saying about adding texture to, you know, simple elements that may just be like a color block. You know, adding that texture to it really kind of elevates the overall concept, possibly, if it's, you know, appropriate for that. Creating custom brushes for your own original artwork instead of using the ones provided in Illustrator or downloaded from an outside source will ensure that your work is unique and truly becomes one of a kind work of art. We are going to explore 4 different styles of brushes. So painted art brushes is one that we're going to learn about. And this can be used to create lifelike brush texture to your strokes. It says Stokes. I'm not sure why it says Stokes. Pattern brushes can be used as a repeated pattern along a path or as a stroke, as well as for shading and highlights. The scatter brushes, randomly placed objects, also good for shading and soft highlights and shadows. And then line work brushes, used for details and outlines to get organic paint style to artwork. So for this assessment, you will be creating and saving 4 custom Illustrator pattern brushes. Excuse me, guys. You will then enhance the simple illustration below and make it more complex by using your brushes to add objects, pattern, texture, and or shading. Notice that this is similar to the illustration you worked within your week 1 assessment if you had chosen the landscape to work with. This will give you an excellent opportunity to see how much a simple flat art illustration can take on a new and completely unique characteristic by just applying different techniques to it. All right, so you're going to download the Illustrator documents and AI file. So go ahead and click on that and save it to your desktop or wherever your folder is. Plan how you would like to enhance the landscape. You can plan first of like things that you're thinking about. Create 4 brushes from each style listed above from your artwork, either created in Illustrator or by hand and scanned in. See this week's course media for the process. And you're going to name and save your brushes in the pattern library with the following naming conventions. So you have custom painted art 1, custom brush 1, custom scatter 1, and custom line work 1. Sorry guys. Use the brushes to add to and enhance the landscape. You're welcome to create more than 1 brush to use in any style if it will enhance your composition. However, you must utilize at least 1 brush type in each style. And then you're going to save it as an AI file and then also a PDF version of your illustration. You're going to save both the PDF and Illustrator file for this, or submit both of the files for the assignment. There are samples here you can definitely be inspired by to look off of. Let's open this up here. Here's one of them. And this student is using just a very simple sky, almost like wind, maybe a highlight in the top as maybe a calligraphy brush. The trees are placed in there, maybe with the scatter brush. You also have the texture line here with the grass. That would be probably more of the, it would be more of the line work brush. Okay, let's open up the other example here. I'm sorry, I cannot always mute my mic. I apologize in advance. Okay, here's one. It's showing the grass in the background as maybe the art brush. The flowers being put in there is the scatter brush. And then you have the artwork brush here with the kite. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So some things to think about with each brush. Have you guys ever played around with brushes before in Illustrator? Maybe 1 or 2. Yep. Yeah, you can do real artwork in that. So talking about that, let's go ahead. Okay, let's go ahead and I want to download, let's, just for the sake, because we're talking about the grass, let's download the grass white background. Just like a image, a raster-based image. I'm going to pull that out here. I'm going to throw this over into my desktop. And we're going to go into Illustrator. And I already kind of downloaded, excuse me, this is kind of what you'll see minus the stuff down here. So you'll see this landscape here, and that's up to you to create these brushes. I hope you guys can see this here. Am I sharing this? Yeah. Use the brushes, the 4 brushes that were mentioned for this particular assessment. So you're going to show this within your file here. So the painted art brushes can be used to create a lifelike brush texture to your strokes. And so let's show you kind of what that's all about. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually go File, Place, and we're going to place that image of the grass in there. The only thing I might have to do is take out the white. So let me see if I can image trace this. Might make it black though. Let me see. Yeah, it does. Image trace. Oops. You can expand. See if I can color it. Oops, ungroup. Yeah, this is gonna be, let me go ahead and actually take that into Photoshop first. Let me go ahead and take the grass. I'm gonna make the grass, let me get another image that might be a little easier to take the white out of too. I'm just trying to take the white out so I don't have to worry about that being a part of my image here. So I'm gonna just open it up in Photoshop. You guys can't see what I'm doing here, but open this up here. I'm just gonna save it as a ping file. Okay, this might actually not work either. Let's see, I'm gonna crop this. You guys can't see what I'm doing, but bear with me here. I'm just gonna crop the white totally out and save this as a simple JPEG. Okay. There is a grass, actually there is a grass brush. Let me show you real quick before I even get into all this. So if you go to your brushes, so window brushes will bring up your brush panel box. And if you right click on the upper right hand corner, you have an actual library in here. And you can download different brushes and import them in here. Like for instance, you probably don't have the Wacom 3D brushes or maybe the vector packs. That's something that I downloaded and imported into my Illustrator brush panel box here. So you might just see the basic, I think, arrows down to maybe decorative or image brush library, maybe. So there's different brushes that you can actually use here. So let's say if you wanted to do, and there's other libraries you can check out too. Let's see, if you wanted to do bristle brush, decorative, scattered, elegant curl, kind of brings up a preset of brushes here. So you can kind of check it out. I don't know if there's any grass in here. Looks like there's a cityscape. Here's a cityscape. So if you were to take your brush and actually want to add a cityscape to your little country area here, what you would do is open up your cityscape, choose that, go to your paintbrush tool and go ahead and paint it in there, almost like a brush. Now you can also do the pen tool, so if it's a little bit more controlled to create that line. And then you just click right onto the brush style. You can edit this by selecting the direct selection tool and editing this line. So like say you wanted maybe some of this to be pulled away from it or adjusted. Yep. You can use well, you should use, I guess the point of this is creating your own custom brushes. But you can play around with what's in there right now just for the fun of it. And I just wanted to see if I could find, there should be a grass option in here, and that's kind of what I was trying to figure out here. Go back to, let's see here. I just wanted to show you some of the options in here. So definitely check it out. Image brush library. This is, I think I had this actually on one of my brushes and I was painting with it by accident. You guys were calling me out on this Gene one. So, just could show you really quickly here. This is the image brush library. So you can actually, and I'm going to show you how to create this. This is like an art paintbrush. This is what I'm going to explain here in a second, which is your painted art brush. Okay. So all you need to do, I'm going to kind of delete these or add in my brush area here. create your artwork, or you can place in, let me place in that grass just to show you guys real quick. Now this is going to be cropped, but you get the idea. You can place in an actual photograph and create an art brush here. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, sorry. All right, so you can place in the image that you want to create as your brush and go ahead and dump it right into your brush panel box. Now, a new brush dialog box will appear, and it's going to ask you, which one that's, available, which one do you want to turn into? Do you want it to be a scatter brush, an art brush, or a pattern brush? And for this one, we just want to say art brush. So click OK. And then the art brush options dialog box will appear. And you can go ahead and name this whatever you want, based on what you have here. Now, I'm just going to click OK for now, just so it applies to it. And then you can kind of see, I'm going to delete this, that it pulls it into the brush panel so you can actually see it in here. You can take your paintbrush and do your own little line here. Now, of course, mine's not going to be as, it's kind of more of a line that's kind of cropped there. Yeah, so it's kind of the stroke. If you double click over top of that, that's where you can kind of click on the preview and you can play around with the options here. So basically, the width is just, you can kind of play around with the scale of it. And these are with the sliders here, R4. If you want to scale proportionately based on your image, you can have that selected. I've stretched to fit stroke length. So this kind of might be stretched a little bit because it's trying to fit on that length. Stretch between lines, it's a little hard to explain here because I have a different object. So I'm going to kind of go back and I'll show you that in a second. And then your direction is basically the direction of which you are clicking and dragging your line. So you can have the stroke from the right to left. You can have the stroke from left to right, have it applied from bottom to top, or from top to bottom. So you can kind of play with those options. And like I said, once I get the icon in here, it'll be easier to see than this image. So I'll kind of go back to that. You can kind of have a key color overlap if you would like. You can flip the actual image. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me pull this over. So it could kind of be reversed. You can flip across, upside down, overlap. And this is just basically adjusting the corners and folds, which we don't really have right now because I just did one solid line. And click OK. Apply strokes. Okay. So you can always alter this just by double clicking in there and changing that. Now, if you wanted to do, say, an icon that you created, or say it's a picture of something like without a background like this, you can do the same thing by dragging this down, saying art brush, click OK. And I wanted to show you this real quick. Let me click OK just so we can apply it. Paintbrush tool, and depending on how I click and drag and how I have this saved is how it's going to be painted. So right now I have it on stroke from top to bottom. So if I were to go top to bottom, it's going to give me more of a what the image is going to look like upright. And you can change this completely if you want. What I wanted to show you here was, let's see here. The stretch between guides. Now I don't have actually this little inset is showing me how I can just focus maybe on the trunk of the tree being the line, the main part of the line. So I'm kind of dragging this little option box down just to kind of focus in on the trunk, and you'll see kind of what I'm talking about when I click OK and draw a line here. Give me 1 second. It's kind of hard to see until I do it. I'm going to draw another line with that selected. Oops. Let's go this way. Here we go. So you can see now it's following this line, stretching it. And when I move this, you'll kind of see it being morphed. So if you don't want say the top part of the tree to be changed, but you like the whole dynamic on the bottom of the tree, I think we can kind of pull this up too, I think. Timber, yeah, kind of ignore that bottom part. We can kind of pull this up a little bit. If I pull this all the way up, you'll kind of see the changes that happen, but there you go. And then again, if you can do different colors in here, let me move my swap. If I double click, I can actually take my eyedropper tool and select, you know, if say there's another color in here, which there really isn't, I could do that and change the color over top of what I have. Right now, I don't really have that option because I only have one color. But yeah, so that's, and then you can flip it. Here you go, flipping it. So it's from left to right, flip across, which really doesn't give too much of a change. So there's different things that you can do. All right, now with that being said, I'm gonna play just about the art brush, and in your course media page, these videos are all in there, and I really highly recommend, and that's kind of why I'm showing them today, to kind of help me out with my voice here. But each of these are kind of showing, you know, how to apply to the art brush, how to create a custom art brush. So let's go ahead and review the custom art brush, what I just explained. It goes in a little bit more detail here, and I'm going to kind of give my voice a rest. So give me 1 second.
Art brushes apply artwork to a path and provide options for controlling how it scales on that path. Now, in the latest version of Illustrator, you can even create an art brush from an image as well. Let's take a closer look. I'm beginning this video with the artbrush.ai file already open on my computer. And I just have a couple of pieces of artwork on my artboard that I'm going to use to create an art brush. So I'm going to start by opening up the brushes panel. And to create an art brush, it couldn't get much easier. I'm just going to select a piece of artwork, and I'm going to go ahead and drag this and drop it onto the brushes panel. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose art brush, and I'll go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to give this art brush a name. I'm going to call this the LBV art brush. And before I do too much here, I'm just going to go ahead and change the direction that the artwork is going to apply to the path. So you can see right now it's going to go across the path. So I'm going to use the up arrow here so that the art is drawn from the bottom up. And I'm just going to go ahead and leave it set to stretch to fit stroke length, and I'll click OK. Now to see what this looks like, I'm going to grab my brush tool, make sure we have that selected, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw a path. And you'll see that when I do, the art brush is applied to the full length of the path. Now, in addition, what I'm going to do so that I can see the options here, I'm going to click on this to select it. And in the stroke panel, I'm going to go ahead and change my swatches. I'm going to go ahead and pick, let's go with like this orange color here. Now, nothing changed right now, and it's not supposed to, but just understand that when you do utilize coloring, that when you're applying it to a brush, you need to use the stroke color. Now we're going to take a look at these options. So if we go back to the brushes panel, I'm going to double click on this art brush. And now we can make sure that we have our preview turned on. So first of all, let's take a look at some of these properties. Brush scale options. If we choose scale proportionately, you can see that the art is going to scale proportionately to the path that you drew. So depending on the size of the path and how it's being applied, it's going to scale it proportionally. Now another option we have is stretch between guides. Now this one's pretty cool because you can see right now it provided 2 guides that we can use to control our artwork. And you can see that right now it's stretching everything between these guides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this top guide down so it's not including any of the leaf. And when I let go, you'll see that now only this portion that's between the guides is going to stretch. Trunk is going to go on forever, and then it just adds the tree at the very end. So it's pretty cool. Now, in addition, for the properties up here for the width, you can choose between several different options. Pressure and bearing are specific to stylus use with tablet devices, but you could choose some of the other options to control how this looks. So I'll leave mine set to fixed, but you'll notice as I drag this slider that the top of the tree is getting bigger. So this option, fixed, only has one control. You could choose, like, for example, stylus wheel, and then you have more than one controls to control the minimum and maximum here, like how much it gets distorted in the horizontal and vertical direction. So I'll go ahead and reset these to about where they were, about 100%. And then what we can also do is when you are choosing stretch between guides, you can numerically control the start and end point if you want. Now for colorization, this is where my current stroke color is going to come into play. And so, for example, if I choose tints, you'll see that it's going to apply this solid tint to the whole brush. You could click this little helper here that'll show you a tip that explains each of the different colorization methods. For example, none, tints, tints and shades, and hue shift. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Now if I choose tints and shades, you can see this gets very dark because it's essentially applying my stroke color on top of the current color. And because these are two very dark colors, I'm not getting much of an appearance here. So with lighter artwork, you would get more of a value here for tints and shades. Now for hue shift, this is where this key color comes into play. And you can see my current key color is green, because that's what the majority of my artwork is. But if I were to click on the eyedropper, I could go ahead and pick up the brown to set that as the key color. And that would then in turn change this artwork. Now I'm going to have to go ahead and hit OK and apply the strokes to see the change, but you can in fact see the artwork change here. Now I'll double click on this one more time. You can also choose to flip it along the horizontal or vertical axes. And you can also choose how the corners overlap and fold when you have a more drastic adjustment. Now go ahead and click OK. One more thing I'd like to show you is that with an embedded image in Illustrator, we can make that an art brush as well. So if I drag this, drop it into my brushes panel, choose to make this an art brush. Again, we have the exact same options that we do with regular artwork, and we have the same controls. So if we click OK, you can now select a path and apply that artwork to the path. So I'll go ahead and select these different options, and we can see how the artwork is being applied. As you can see, art brushes are flexible and powerful and are very, very easy to create and manipulate inside of Adobe Illustrator.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Like I said, I was trying to avoid you guys hearing me cough. All right, so that's the art brush. Pretty cool. Does anybody have any questions about that? Kind of interesting to see the options here. Okay. So that was the painted art brush. Okay. The pattern brushes can be used. We're gonna learn about this next. Can be used as a repeated pattern along a path or as a stroke, as well as for shading and highlights. Did you guys ever play around with the pattern brushes? Move my stuff here. I don't know if I'm sharing my screen. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Oh man, I'm dying. This is getting annoying for sure. Oh, okay. So the pattern brushes, it is basically, let me show you, I just kind of pulled in this, pulled in this image of, and you can definitely do this yourself. I just kind of pulled this in very quickly. And again, just drag over, drop it over brushes, and the pattern brush option is right down here. You just click OK. And what's neat about this brush is it actually creates this pattern along the path. And I'm just going to click OK So I can delete this, and then it creates the pattern brush down here. And then I'm going to take my brush tool, and I'm going to, oh, let me do something real quick here. Hold on. Make my stroke black, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in my actual path. Let me do a straight path here. All right. Now I'm going to double click right over top of my pattern brush so that when I click on preview, I can see the changes happening. Same thing here, you know, you can change the size. So I don't know if you just noticed that when I changed that down to this, and I don't know if you can see this panel here. When I go down in size, you can see more of the pattern being created on that stroke. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. You can space this out by placing, you know, a percentage here. So you can put like 20% spaces about 20%, so on and so forth. And then you have these corner tile options. And this is basically, you can kind of customize this, say, for every corner of your turns. They could be a different design as well. So let me show you here. Oh, I don't have anything to show you. Let me cancel this out here and show you real quick. So if I were to draw just like a regular square and created a brush, and just drag and drop in here. I'm going to say pattern, click OK. I'm just going to click OK and delete and go back to this pattern brush, my birds. And then for this option, so the corner, outer corner tile is the first option here. So I can select this. I thought this would be in here. Hold on a second. Oh, it's not in there. Cancel this. I think this has to be in your swatches. Yes. Okay. So let's make a swatch out of it first. I think that's what. All right. Let me go back here. There we go. Okay, so I just created a swatch pattern of that block. So now in my second, actually I'm going to choose the first option here. My first option for the corner, I'm going to choose the square, and you'll see kind of how that replaces the corners with a square. Now this is kind of weird in this regards because I have these organic birds, but if this was like a straight line, it'd be more of a border, you know, type blocks that would be nice, a nice asset there. So you can kind of customize this based on, you know, what you want to show on each corner here. You can see this one is on the inner corner tile. You have the start tile as well, and then the end tile. You can flip it just like we did before, flip across, so it kind of turns it upside down based on where the actual axis is. You can add space. You can have the approximate path or stretch to fit. That's kind of what we had here. And then again, you can kind of play around with the color if that's something that you want to, you know, mess around with. Apply strokes. I'm going to show you real quick too. If you were to have, let's say, just like a regular square here, you can apply the same border to this. So I just clicked on my brush that I just created. It looks a little weird because I'm gonna have to make it a little smaller so you guys can see. But you can also do something like this and apply it to a shape. Okay. So that is the pattern brush tool. So you're kind of, it's used as a repeating pattern along a path or as a stroke. So it's good for shading and highlights. So let's see here. Let's do one that's more, let's see, organic here. Let's do like let's do a line that's stroke here. A little thicker. And then we'll use the width tool. Play around with this. Like a a shadow or a highlight. There's my stroke here. Make it rounded, and then maybe a different opacity here. All right, transparency. Make it a little less, so it's almost like a highlight. And then we're going to drag this down to create this pattern brush. All right. So it creates this pattern brush that you can add very easily to the areas in your, this is really hard to see here. Let me change the opacity a little bit. If I can actually change that there, I'll have to create a new, there we go. You can kind of do some really cool, you know, highlights, lowlights. Let me see if I just do a straight across. There we go. You know, look to your work here. All right. Pattern brush. Let's take a look at that. Video here we got. You guys check this out here. I'm going to make sure I actually click on the video. And then once we watch it, let me know if you have any questions here.
Pattern brushes utilize pattern swatches to create the pattern that appears in the brush. In this version of Illustrator, however, this process has gotten easier than ever with a new feature called automatic corner generation. Let's explore how this works. I'm beginning this video with the pattern.ai file already open on my computer. And you can see we've already created some pattern brushes that have been applied to this artwork. And I've left these here so you can see examples of what they look like. Now let's first explore the traditional method of creating these pattern brushes. So the first step was that we had to take a piece of existing artwork and make it a pattern swatch. So if I go to the Object menu, go to Pattern and choose Make, you can see that I get a dialog box telling me the pattern has been added to the swatches panel. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to call this LBV side, because this is the side of the pattern that I'm creating. And we'll leave the tile type set to grid, that's fine. And then we can go ahead and get out of here, just back out of that. And if you look in your swatches panel now, I'm going to go ahead and view these as a large thumbnail just to make it a little bit easier to see. You can see the pattern has been applied. Now typically the pattern is used to fill an object, right? So if I choose this object and apply a pattern, it fills it with this repeat pattern. Now, that's not what I want to do here, so I'm going to undo that. And then the other portion of this is you also had to create patterns for how the corners were going to be created. So what I'm going to do, just very quickly, is using my rectangle tool, I am going to set my fill to black and my stroke to none. And I'm just going to draw a square that is about the same width as this pattern. And with this selected, I'm going to go to Object, Pattern, Make. And I'll go ahead and give this one a name of LBV Corner. There we go. And then I can just go ahead and double click to exit out of there. And now we have, it's hard to see here, but this is our LBV corner and there's our LBV side. So how do we make a pattern brush out of that? Well, it's pretty simple. We open up our brushes panel and either from the panel menu, choose new brush, or simply click the new brush button down here at the bottom. And in the new brush dialog box, I'm going to choose to create a pattern brush. And I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, I'm going to call this my LBV pattern brush manual, since I created this manually. And here is where I choose the patterns that are found in my swatches panel to create the brush. So for example, for my outer corner tile, I'm going to scrub down and I'm going to choose the LBV corner. And then for the side tile, I'm going to scroll down and choose the LBV side. And you can see as I start adding these, it starts giving me a preview of what the brush is going to look like. So for my inside corner, I'm going to choose that same LBV corner. And then if I wanted to, I could also create a starting and ending tile. So if you wanted to create a certain icon or a certain pattern for an open path, you could certainly do that. We have a whole bunch of options here. We can flip the pattern along the path, or we can flip it across the path, as you see here. Not much of a difference for this particular pattern. And then we can also control how the pattern is applied to the path. So in this example, it's stretching to fit, or we can have it add space to make it fit. Because remember, those patterns are not going to match up perfect for every particular line segment that we draw. So, and then you can also have it approximate the path, which is another method. You can also choose your colorization method down here. So for this example, I'm just going to choose tints, and key color is irrelevant because hue shift is the one we would need to use for defining a key color. So we'll just leave it set to tints, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now we have our brush. So to show you how this works, if I click on this object and I apply my brush, you can see that the brush is now being applied to this object. And I'm going to have to reduce the stroke considerably. Let's make it like 1/4 of a point. There we go. Maybe even smaller, like 0.15. There we go. And you see how this is going to appear when it is created. Now, let's take a look at the new automatic corner generation feature. So this way, there's a lot less work, and Illustrator does a lot of the work for us. So to create a pattern brush the new way, I'm going to select my pattern, and I'm just going to drag and drop it into the brushes panel. In the new brush dialog, I'm going to choose to create a pattern brush, and I'm going to click OK. Now, this is where the magic happens, because remember, all we did was created a side tile, which is the requirement. And I'm going to call this LBV pattern automatic. Go. And you can, again, adjust the scaling factor, whether you want to use fixed or by pressure, stylus wheel, tilt, bearing, rotation. I'm going to leave mine set to fixed, and you can also tweak the spacing as well. But the part that I really want to point out to you is that the side tile is automatically added here. Take a look at what we have here. If you click on the drop-down menu, you'll see a whole list of automatically generated patterns that we can choose from. So for example, for my outer corner here, maybe I'll choose this one. And now you can see that I didn't have to draw this or anything. It's automatically being created. What about our inner corner? I can click on this, and maybe I can choose another inner corner automatically generated tile as well. So I'm going to choose this one, and you can see now how the pattern is being applied. And it's done with a lot less work on your part. So you could tell these are automatically generated by this little orange icon in the upper right-hand corner. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And again, now I'm going to select this object. I'm going to change the color. Let's go ahead and make this a red stroke. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back to my brushes panel, and I'm going to choose the new one that we created. And when I choose that, you can see the nice result that we get for the brush that we created. Let's take a look at one more example. I'm going to move over here to this one. Once again, I can select this object, drag and drop. It's as easy as that. Go to our pattern brush, click OK. And again, we now have some automatically generated corner patterns that we can choose. So maybe I would choose, I don't know, this one looks pretty cool, that they apply to the corner. I can even apply a different one to the inner corner. Maybe I'll use, say, this one. That looks pretty cool. Again, colorization method if you wish, and click OK. And now when I apply that brush to my shape, to make it a lot smaller here, maybe make it like 0.15, we can now see the brush that's been created. And just to show you, if you wanted to visually see how this brush looks as you make the adjustments, now that you have it applied to a path, double click on the brush, and now you can make additional adjustments, such as add space to fit, stretch to fit, and if you turn on your preview, you'll be able to see this dynamically. So approximate path, so on and so forth. You can even come up here and start tweaking the spacing. So we can apply like a 30% fixed spacing, or you can tell it to apply it based on other properties. So I'll go ahead and click OK, apply that to my strokes. Again, to change the color on this one, we can simply choose a different color for the stroke, and that'll be applied to our pattern brush. Now, one final thing I'd like to show you with these pattern brushes, which is also a new feature inside of Illustrator, is that if I move down here into the lower right corner, I have an image that I've placed in this document. And what I can do with an embedded image is I can drag this to my brushes panel, create a pattern brush, and click OK. And you can see that it automatically added this brush as a side panel. But take a look in here. It has automatically generated patterns based on images for how you might want to create these corners. And so, for example, maybe I want to use the auto in between for both the inside and the outside corner. And you can see how now, in the latest version of Illustrator, how not only can we create a pattern brush out of an image, but we also have automatic corner generation as well. And we also get the combination of the two. We get automatic corner generation when creating images for pattern brushes as well. It doesn't get much better than that, and I encourage you to practice using these brushes on your own.
All right, what do you guys think about that? Any questions? Let me go back here. Stop sharing. Pattern brush, kind of interesting to play around with. Yeah, pretty cool. So that's the pattern brush. The next one is the scatter brush. Excuse me. I'm going to show it with this little cloud that I created. And again, this could be whatever you design it to be. I just kind of plopped this in here, and I thought this would be good for a scatter brush. And this is the other brush that you guys can play around with. So I'm going to drag and drop this into my brush panel here, which you can't really see because I have too many panels. But there's a scatter brush option. Click OK. And just like the other brushes, you have these settings you can play around with. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to get this brush started here. Excuse me. Choosing that, brush down here in my, and I can't get this box out of here. Hold on 1 second. There we go. My brush box is being hidden under here. And I think because I didn't click OK, it didn't save it. So let me go back here. Click and drag in there. Scatter brush, right? Click OK. All right. So I'm going to name this Cloud. And again, you have different options to change the size, the spacing here. And let's see if it's actually applying it to this. No, I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to double click on this. Oh, not that. Why isn't this saving? Hold on 1 second, guys. Scatter, click OK. We're going to do, let's just save this as clouds here real quick. Scattered, random. I think it's because I don't have a stroke. So give me 1 minute here. There we go. Okay. Now I can see. If I hit preview, now I can kind of see this being changed here. So you can choose random or you can choose fixed. So you can choose random, so they randomly become bigger and smaller based on what you're, kind of applying on this size orientation. The spacing can be fixed or random. This can, space them out depending on the line. Scatter is random as well. You can have them scattered around. Rotation, same thing. Click OK. Apply to strokes. And let's try to do a line here with scattered clouds. So it's kind of a cool thing to play around with. double click on there to change it if I want to. Again, you can kind of play around with these settings, bigger or smaller. Kind of cool. Yeah, you can do all kinds of neat things with this. Scatter, you know. So that's the scatter brush. Kind of some cool things you can play around with that. You could do that with like trees. So if you had a tree image as well. Let's do a simple tree. I'm gonna do just a real simple one, almost like, oops, like a triangle tree. Eyeballs. Are you making fun of me again? You guys. My color mode here. Take that green. Just do very simple. Oh, okay. I thought you were making fun of me from the last demo that I did with the eyeballs. You thought it looked like eyeballs. Okay, I'm gonna group this. Zombie teeth. There you go. Throw this in here again. Do the scatter brush. Click OK. And then once we have that in there, we can take your brush tool, select that, and do some scattering of the trees. So let's change the size here. It's a little bit too big. So there you go. And then you can do a fixed and random size so you have a good perspective. That's kind of what you're looking for. Spacing can be random, so some can be closer than others. Kind of like that. Okay. So you can kind of play with trees or something like that. Any questions about the pattern or the scatter brush? Okay, I'm going to play. Here's another video you guys can take a look at. Again, this is kind of supplemental videos here. So we can make any kind of brush. Yes, but they have to be at least the 4 that are described that we're talking about. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's the 4 that are presented there. Yeah. You got it.
Virtually any piece of artwork, including now in the latest version of Illustrator, scatter brushes can be created from virtually any piece of artwork, including now in the latest version of Illustrator, images. Let's create a couple of scatter brushes so you can see how they work. Now, beginning this video with the scatter.ai file already open on my computer. And I'm going to start by coming over here to my brushes panel. And I have some artwork on my artboard that I want to make into a scatter brush. So it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to go ahead and select this piece of artwork, the star, and I'm going to drag it and drop it into the brushes panel. Now, this displays my new brush dialog box where I can choose the type of brush I want to create. And in this example, I'm going to go ahead and create a scatter brush. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that option. And now it's presenting me with these scatter brush options. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this LBV scatter brush. There we go. And up here at the top, I can control how I want this piece of artwork to be scattered. So let's just look at something real quickly. If I leave it at the defaults and I click OK, you can see that if I grab my paintbrush tool and I make sure that my brush is selected, I can go ahead and drag to draw a path, and the scatter brush is going to go ahead and follow that path. Now, what I'm going to do here, so you can kind of see what these options are going to do, I'm going to double click on that brush to open up my scatter brush options. And this is the way that I like to modify my artwork because it allows me to see what these settings are going to do. So for example, if I turn my preview on, I can come up here and I can change the settings. So for example, right now the size of all the stars are fixed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. And so you can see I can choose random, pressure, stylus wheel, tilt, bearing, and rotation. Now, many of these, such as pressure and bearing, are related to using a stylus with a tablet. So those options are not going to be relevant for using a mouse. But I'm going to go ahead and choose random. And now as I drag these sliders, you're going to see that the artwork is going to start changing, or I should say updating, to reflect the changes that I'm making. So I'm basically specifying how small I'm allowing the stars to be, and then how big I'm allowing the stars to be as well. So I'm actually going to pull these down. I don't want these to be too large here. And then I can adjust the spacing. And the spacing has the same properties. So I'm going to choose random. Then I'm going to start adjusting the spacing. So pull this down to bring them closer together, and pull this down as well. So you're basically setting the minimum and maximum here. So that looks pretty good. Scatter, I'll set that to random as well. Then you can control how much you want these stars to basically scatter on each side of the path. And then your rotation, you can also set that to whatever you wish. And that's going to allow me to rotate these in various ways. Now, for the rotation relative to, you can set that to the page or to the path as well. So you'll have to choose which one you prefer depending on the rotation method that you choose. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that set at the current settings. Now, down here for colorization, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because you have several options available in your drop-down menu. Now, this little guy here gives you a nice little tip and kind of shows you how the colorization is applied. And the important thing to note is that your current stroke color defines what's going to colorize these objects. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you'll notice that if I choose tints, that this is now going to tint these objects using that particular setting. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you'll see it asks me if I want to apply this to the current strokes or leave the strokes as is. So I'm going to go ahead and apply these to the strokes, and you can see how the colorization method changes. Let's go ahead and go back in there. I'm going to go ahead and now change this to tints and shades. And now when I click OK, I'll go ahead and apply it to the strokes. You can see that now you have, instead of it being like a global tint, it's utilizing the stroke and fill, or basically whatever's in the artwork, to tint the different elements differently. Let's open up that one more time. And I also have hue shift. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, with hue shift, you need to choose a key color. And so you can see that right now my key color is set to green. And by default, the key color is going to be chosen based on the most color that appears in the brush that you created. So right now, if I go ahead and click OK, and I apply it to the strokes, we can see how it's adjusting the hue based on that key color. And if I go in here again, and I change my key color, and I do that by clicking on the eyedropper, I'm now going to change my key color to the orange. Click OK. I can only choose key colors from the art that's in there. And if I apply this to the strokes, it's now going to change it to the other key color that I chose. So there's a lot of options that you can choose when creating a scatter brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and command click on this path to delete it. And then let me show you one other way, which is a new feature in the current version of Illustrator, is to create a scatter brush from an image. So this is an image that I placed on my artboard. And if I go to the window menu and choose links, we can see that it is embedded. And that's the requirement for using an image in a brush, is that the image is embedded inside of Illustrator. And you want to keep in mind the size of this image is certainly going to affect your performance depending on your computer and other variables. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And now to make this into a brush, I just drag and drop. choose my scatter brush, and now I have the same options that I can choose. So I'm going to call this the LBV image scatter brush. And we can pretty much perform the same task as we did with the first one. I go ahead and click OK. And with my paintbrush tool selected, I'm just going to go ahead and paint a little bit here. And now if I double click on that brush, now I can start adjusting the properties. And again, I find this to be most useful for adjusting these. So I can change the randomness here, alter the settings, maybe adjust the spacing a little bit. There we go. And then let's do the scatter. We'll set the scatter to random as well. And you can see, now here's the thing, with your colorization method, it really doesn't matter what's chosen here. Even though we can choose different modes here, so I'll go ahead and pick like a different color. For an image such as this, because it's pretty neutral, we're not going to see anything, but quite honestly, these colorization methods don't really apply to your brushes. Even though I apply them, with an image brush, you're not going to see that colorization method applied. No matter what kind of colorization I choose here, even if I choose tints, you can see my stroke is orange. When I apply it to the strokes, nothing really happens with image brushes. So as you can see, not only can these scatter brushes be incredibly powerful and artistic, but they're a lot of fun too.
All right, any questions about that? Any self-explanatory, kind of what we went over, just a little bit more details. All right, and the last brush that we need to go over is the line work brush. Really like the bristle brush. Here, let's see here. So, the bristle brush is located in the brush panel here. Excuse me, guys. Click on the upper right-hand corner, open brush library. Now let me move this over so you can see a little bit more. Open brush library, and then what you're gonna do is go to bristle brush library, and you're gonna check out all of these cool brushes in here. And we can edit these too. These are the ones that you can choose from. And if it's something you like, you can click on it and it'll put it right into your brush area here. So let's say we'll pick a couple here, different styles. When you're done, just click out of that box, go to your brush panel box, and you can edit these. If you just double click on them, on the individual brushes, you can change the size here, the length, the density. So it's like almost like the gradient from the darkest to the lightest, the thickness, the opacity, and the stiffness. So you want it to be kind of more flowy, or I'm sorry, rigid, you go to the right, more flexible to the left. In between, you get the idea. And then you can also change the different styles of brush. So let's say you want to do more of a fan brush or round curve, flat, different kinds of brushes that you would get there. Click OK. So that would be a bristle brush that you can go ahead and paint with. So take your brush tool with that selected, and you can kind of play around with that. Now, it's up to you, and the color that you're placing here is the stroke is what your color you're painting. See here. So let's say you want to do more of maybe highlights in the trees. Zoom in here. This is a little bit bigger, so I'm going to have to edit this. Let's do the size a little bit down. And then we're going to say maybe white here. Oops. So you could do like a highlight with this, which when you zoom out, it looks a little bit better. So you do little highlights. You could do I don't know if you can do grass with this. Probably wouldn't look as shadows and highlights. Yep. So if you want to go darker, you definitely can go that route as well with the dark, shadow work. And then anytime you want to kind of edit it out, you can click in here, and edit it here if you want to make it bigger. Kind of play around with it. I think mine's more flexible, so that's why it's kind of coming out to be this way here. Let me see if I can actually apply this to a shape. I was kind of wondering that here. Here. I don't think you can. An outline maybe. Yes, you can. Yep. So I just applied it to the square here. I just clicked, and it would be the stroke. So I just clicked on the square, and then I kind of clicked right onto the actual brush. All right. Any questions about that? It's like a bristle brush. Okay, this next video is very quick. It's only like 4 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a look at this, and then we'll go from there.
Illustrator provides several different types of bristle brushes that simulate natural brushes when you apply them to your artwork. Let's explore some of these brushes. Now, I'm beginning this video with the face.ai file already open on my computer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over and open up the brushes panel. Now, you're going to see that we have one bristle brush here by default, but there are many more to choose from. So if you want to use one of the bristle brushes provided with Illustrator, you can go to the panel menu, go to Open Brush Library, go to Bristle Brush, and choose Bristle Brush Library. You can also access that by clicking this button right here at the bottom of the brushes panel. Now, this is going to open up your bristle brush library where you have a number of brushes to choose from. So you can pick these from the list. If I pick the stippler, it'll add it to my brushes panel. I'll go ahead and maybe add yet one more. Let's go ahead and add this one. That looks good. And I'll go ahead and close that. Now, if instead you want to create your own brush, what you can do is click on the New Brush button at the bottom of the brushes panel. And in the New Brush dialog, we're going to choose Bristle Brush. So go ahead and click OK. And now you can customize your own brush. So I'm going to call this the LBV Bristle Brush. And you can choose the shape of the brush you want to create. You can see that we have about 10 options to choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and go with maybe one of these flat, blunt brushes. You can adjust the size. And as you do this, you're going to see the preview changes to show you. You can adjust the length. Go ahead and reduce this a little bit. The density, the thickness, the opacity, as well as the stiffness. So once you're happy with these settings, you can go ahead and click OK. And that's going to add your brush to the brushes panel. Now, when you apply this brush, you're going to be using your paintbrush tool. And you have to remember that this particular tool paints using your stroke color. So I'm going to change my stroke color. I'm going to pick maybe like a darker brown here to set my stroke to that color. And now what I'm going to do here, I could just start painting if I want to. So if I click and drag up here, you're going to see that I'm going to start painting strokes. But I'm going to undo that, because what I also want to show you that you can do is if you select this shape with your selection tool, I'm going to turn on the Draw Inside mode. And that's going to allow me to paint inside of this object and kind of stay within this shape. So I'm going to deselect that now, but Draw Inside mode is still enabled. I'm going to go to my brush again. And you can use the left and right bracket keys on your keyboard if you wish to change the brush size. So you can increase or decrease that. And so now, once again, I have to make sure that my stroke color is set to that darker brown that I wanted to use. And now when I start painting, you're going to see that I'm painting within the shape. You'll notice if I go out too far, it's still only drawing inside of that object. And every time you paint with this tool, you're essentially drawing a path, okay? And I've layered this. If you look at my layers panel, I have all the detail in the front, and the background is on its own layer underneath. But you have a lot of flexibility here to choose from, and every time you draw, you're going to draw a path. And what's cool is you can layer on top of one another. You know, so you can do a lot of detail work up here, and every time you draw a path, it's going to kind of layer on top of the other one. So you can experiment with the other brushes as well. You can see that we have a fan brush here. So depending on what you're trying to do, you know, you can create kind of maybe some shading over here. Again, as you do this, you're layering these items on top of one another. And all I'm doing here is just kind of trying to add a little bit of detail so you can see the look and feel and how these brushes work. So you can see that with bristle brushes, they do an amazing job of applying color to artwork in a way that simulates more natural brushes, allowing you to create the look and feel that you desire.
All right, guys, sorry about the coughing in the background. Any questions about the that last brush that we went over here, the bristle brush? Or I guess what you guys will be doing is the line work. It's called the line work brush. Losing my voice here, guys. All right. All right, so yeah, do what you think that, you know, obviously you want to use all of your brushes that are listed in the assessment. You know, experiment with them, play around with that, and then create your composition. You might want to kind of think about the elements that you want to add in here, but then create your composition, you know, experimenting with that. And then you're going to save as, and then the assessment is 3. You're going to save the Illustrator file and then also desktop here. And then also you are going to export it as a PDF. Yeah, it's actually kind of neat to play around with. PDF. You can just save it as a smallest file. PDF is fine. And then you can zip those together for submission. All right. So that's pretty much all in here. And the course media, the videos that I just showed you guys to supplement what I was showing you is in course media. And I just want to show you real quick where I got those videos. So here they are. They're actually under optional. So we saw all of these except for maybe the calligraphy brush. So we saw all of these just today. But there's also other material that you're going to want to check out as well for week 3 above here. So you can kind of take a look at that. Also, there's an article here you can click on. Just kind of explains about each brush as well. So if you need kind of a nice little summing up of brushes and what they're all about, kind of breaks it down here. Calligraphy brushes, scatter brushes, art brushes, bristle brushes, and pattern brushes, what they are. Good question. I believe it's a quiz. Let's go check here. Lily's asking if week 4 assessment is a test or a quiz. You mean like an exercise? Yeah, this is going to be more of not a quiz. It's not a test. It's you're creating a certain effect. So we'll get into that next week. Yep. Filters and effects. All right, any questions about what we kind of went over with the brushes? Good question though. Kind of nice to look forward just to see what you guys are going to be prepping for here. Oh, okay. Okay. Very cool. So kind of plan out what you want to do with your landscape composition, and create your 4 custom brushes, and they're all named here again. The line work is the bristle brush. That's kind of what that is, line work brushes. And then they're all kind of explained here as well. Yeah, so next week, besides the assessment for week 4, just kind of jumping ahead. Excuse me, guys. You're going to be revising your week 2 assignment for week 4. So if you want to kind of get that all kind of in your brain, ready to, you know, kind of approach that. What's nice is this discussion this week here, which most of you guys should be pretty much posted to. You have until midnight tomorrow to post to. You guys are giving each other feedback. So it's not just me, but also your fellow peers on your work. So you can take that feedback and apply it for your next week assignment for a project. All right. Let's see. Anything else that we got going on here? Let me see my slides. Give me 1 second here if I went through all of this or not. Let's see. All right. Yeah, just have one more slide here. So the brush types, just make sure you're showing all 4 art patterns, scatter and line, and you should be good to go. And then again, these are the examples besides the ones that I showed in the demo of things that you could do. Uh-oh. Okay. I'm just going to open it up now. If you guys want to look at anything, want feedback on, Lily just said about having 3 variations of her assignment here. So if you guys want to share anything, let me know. And if not, we'll just kind of wrap it up here. All right. Michael, you're good? You got your book cover. Did you want to show your 3 variations, or you good to go? Oh, okay. I'll stop sharing. You can, I'm going to unmute you as well, so you can definitely share your screen when you're ready. Thank you guys for sticking in there with me today. I've been, like I said, hopefully next week I'm not all crazy coughing while I'm doing my lecture. I'm just like one of those things. Appreciate you guys being patient with me. Okay, thanks, Michael. Have a great night.
I can't find it.
Uh-oh.
I was trying to clean up my screen.
Your desktop.
Yeah, my desktop. Hang on. Sorry about my TV. I lost the remote, so I don't know how to turn it off or change the channel. Was stuck there.
Not like the good old days where you just went up and turned it off, right?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, maybe here it is. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. Share screen. So here's the first one.
Okay.
Which has the changes that
Sorry, guys.
suggested, and also the blue letters that
Okay.
Marla suggested.
Looks
But
good.
then I changed the smallness of the picture and all that.
Okay.
So there's one.
All right.
Here's two. This is with the grunge background, the pattern. It's at 10% opacity.
Okay. For the texture.
What?
The texture. Yeah, I see that. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. And then I changed the key up here.
Sorry, Lily.
It's okay. Under the author.
Okay. That looks good.
And the other changes. And then I have the last one. Whoops. The third one, which doesn't have the background on it.
Okay. All right. Let me see the first one again. You can use your little arrow tools on. There you go.
What?
You can use your arrow tools on your keyboard to flip through.
Oh, yeah. I always forget.
Easier way.
So here's one. It's got the key. It's a different key. And the blue that Marla suggested.
Okay.
Then the background has texture with the suggestions that you made earlier. Getting rid of the brown and making things smaller and bigger and,
Right. All right. All right. What do you think? What's your favorite?
I actually like number 2.
Because the texture.
Yeah.
I do too. I think that the texture works really well. I think everything's very balanced. I like how you put the key kind of close to the author name on the spine. It all kind of blends really well together.
Hang on, Bill. Hang on for just a minute. Okay, I think I'll go with this one then.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of, and you're doing exactly what you should be doing with just experimenting with different variations. So that's awesome to see that. So great job to you. That's what designers do. We kind of show like 5 or 6 different variations, just very little small changes just to kind of hone in on concept. And I think that is wonderful. So it's great to see you doing that. I do like the second one. I think it's definitely more effective with the texture. I just like how your elements are aligned. I think it works really well.
Okay, then I'll probably go with this one.
Good job.
Get it printed too.
Yeah, good work on that. I think you really were open to suggestions and applied those suggestions, and then you went with it. You went all out and did your own thing, which is great. Excellent job. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of hard work, but definitely pays off.
Kind of got a right here too going on.
What do you have going on?
What?
What did you say?
I kind of have a dry throat.
Sound like me.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go rest my vocal cords here. Thank you for showing your stuff, Lily. I appreciate it.
Thank you for helping me out.
Yeah, no problem. And if you have any questions going forward, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, have a wonderful night.
Thanks, you too.